Greetings, and welcome. I'm George M. Matthews II, and this is our inaugural broadcast of a new program that we have dubbed The Silence of Our Friends, The Silence of Our Friends. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I am a pastor in Birmingham, Alabama, as well as Bessemer, Alabama. New Life Interfaith Ministries is the name of one church. The other is Calvary Resurrection Christian Church. And the purpose of this program is not to preach or teach the Bible necessarily, but because I am a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, some of that from time to time will come out, I'm certain. But we're really here to examine people of color, Black and brown people in America, the pilgrimage from the mother continent into these yet to be United States of America, and the plight of our people, stemmed by many of the recent racist murders and things of that nature that have happened in these yet to be United States. And there are some things that need to be said from what I feel is a proper perspective. And so our show tonight has 3 points of emphasis, and I welcome you to share and make sure that our voice gets out so that people have a level of connectivity by way of what I believe is important that we share as a community. Yes, we have some challenges with racism and bigotry here in these yet to be United States. And it's going to require the entire community to repair them, people of color and people not of color. This is a systemic problem, in my view, that Black people did not cause. We are the beneficiaries in a negative way, but we did not cause it. But I'll get more into that a little later. Allow me to lay out some groundwork in terms of why this program and programs of this nature are important. The scope of our show tonight is Mr. George Floyd, the Church in America, and Black people. Mr. George Floyd, the Church in America, and Black people. That'll be the title of our episode tonight. And if you wish to find it on YouTube, that's the title that you will go with. You can also search for it with my name. There were some prolific words that were uttered by one of my heroes, and I have many men and women who have affected my life and given context and content to my life by way of their integrity and the lives they lived. One such person is Dr. King, A.M.L. King. And Dr. King said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And so as I have been contemplative for over the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe even longer than that, regarding what I could do for people of color, how I could address particular concerns outside the pulpit, outside of our work in the church, because everyone that needs to hear the message and needs to be perhaps broached with more open lines of communication does not necessarily don the portals of church buildings, brick and mortar buildings. But there's a social message that needs to be discussed and shared with people who perhaps do not view themselves as church people or church attendees. And so we're looking to really reach out with that arm and through that arm to touch people and arm them, to use that word again, with information that might force their cognition, their thought process to expand itself. I do believe that not everyone should do the same thing as far as the battle against racism. And if there's a time that this is in step, it is now. I don't think everyone has the same effort, has the same objective. Everyone has the same assignment. But I think there's something everyone can do. And everyone should do what they can do relative to their various platforms to build a collective as we fight systematic racism and its root causes. Now, when I talk about systematic racism, I want to give you a definition. I'm that kind of person. I don't want to presume that people know the context from which whence one is speaking. It can be noted as the same as institutional racism. It's the form of racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions. It is reflected in disparities. That's a widening gap, so to speak, regarding wealth, income, criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and education, among other factors. So when we talk about racism, it has various hues, various coloration, various definition, various points of which it affects. I would like to just lay this down because it's important, I think, that people hear this. Dr. King also made another quote statement: nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity. I think when we talk about racism, when we talk about bigotry, we talk about hate at all. Hate is always embodied or embodies itself in fear. Any person that walks around with a heart full of hate is fearing something. And I think Dr. King's statement speaks to that. Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance. In other words, you can have a person who in their sincerity, in their seriousness, in their honesty, and in their integrity, all of those adjectives can be applicable, but if it's laced and couched in ignorance, you're still where you always were. In other words, you can be sincerely ignorant, and yet because of a sincerity, it does not mitigate the fact that there's still a problem. And then he says conscientious stupidity. And in my view, conscientious stupidity is someone that is able to calculate, is able to, in a pragmatic way, look at something objectively and still come apart from that with stupid, senseless conclusions. And that is, in fact, dangerous. And so one of the things I want to do with this program is to address both levels, sincere ignorance as well as those who are conscientiously stupid. And I don't mean to be offensive, but there are some things that need to be said. So there are three aspects of our show tonight: Mr. George Floyd, the church in America, and Black people. So let's talk about Mr. George Floyd. First of all, I think we have reached critical mass where people of color are angry. I want to say that again. I believe we've reached a place of critical mass, whether in the church or outside the church, as a society. People of color are angry, and that's probably an understatement. The Washington Post has delved out some information that says over 75 cities in America, notwithstanding everything that's happening outside of our country, have been touched either by rioting or demonstrations or so forth and so on over the last week to 10 days. Now, I was explaining this amongst a group of mixed ethnicities as far as the clergy are concerned last week. And I said, at one time about 15, 18, maybe 20 years ago, I had what was believed to have been a kidney stone. I knew nothing about this kind of situation. I, for the most part, at least at that time, had no major health concerns, health challenges. But one day Something happened in my midsection. Something happened in my lower GI, my digestive tract and lower, that was a pain that was excruciating, a pain that I could not describe, nor could I shake. It lasted about 24, 36 hours. And those last few hours, I was writhing on the floor, trying to find, could not sleep in my bed, walking hurt, being still hurt me, sitting in a chair hurt me. And the only minuscule comfort I could find was on the floor. The next day, I went to visit my doctor, and I explained to him what happened. After taking an x-ray, he says to me, I believe, based on the track that I see in your, according to the x-ray, I believe your body passed a kidney stone. I said, doctor, I have never been able to even imagine that kind of pain. He said, well, let me share something with you. He said, the pain that you experienced in our medical field, we say to men that it is secondary to that pain a woman experiences in childbirth. And I was aghast, shocked. And it was at that time that I began to understand that a woman is 100 times stronger than a man. And I had to see my now doctor, internist, maybe about a week ago, 10 days or so. And I was telling him this story, and he said, that's absolutely right. He says, well, we do believe in our community that a man experiencing a kidney stone is second to that of a woman experiencing childbirthing pains. And I'll say this to non-Black people. If you have not experienced the pain of being Black in America, driving while Black, shopping while Black, living while Black, being educated while Black, so forth and so on, looking for a job while Black, if you've not experienced that, it will be tantamount to you attempting to understand what having a kidney stone was if you have never had that experience. And so I say what we've seen in our America is the reflection of people of color who are angry. I do not advocate looting. I do not advocate rioting, but I understand demonstrations. I understand protests, and I understand anger. Mr. George Floyd, I think, was the tipping point in America and outside of America to see this man. And let me just read a little biography here regarding Mr. Floyd. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd, a 46-year-old man, died in Minneapolis, Minnesota, when white police officer Derek Chauvin knelt on his neck for almost 9 minutes. I just have to pause there. It riddles in my blood every time I think about the video of this man who, with his hands in his pocket, did in public what many racist and bigoted people not of color have done in their minds and sometimes by their actions for centuries. But this man had no cowardice. While being videotaped, while being taped with cellular telephone, so forth and so on, he kept this action going for almost 9 minutes while Floyd was handcuffed, lying face down on the street. 2 other officers further restrained Mr. Floyd, who had been arrested on suspicion of using a counterfeit bill, and a fourth officer prevented onlookers from intervening as Floyd begged for his life. You think of this now. And if you've never had this kidney stone, please don't try to explain it if you've never felt it. This man, and I say man, not a dog, not an animal, but this man begged for his life. Now, how inhumane can you be if someone is begging for their life and that doesn't affect you? How turned off to the plight of other people can you be? Another human being. Not only are you killing them in broad daylight, but you are ignoring his pleas for mercy. Notice this, it goes further. He says, I can't breathe, repeatedly. During the final 3 minutes, Floyd was motionless and had no pulse. The officer ignored the onlookers' pleas that Chauvin remove his knee from Floyd's neck, which he did not do even as arriving medics attempted to treat Floyd. Now, we'll talk about the medics on another show because I noticed some things about those medics that make me raise some suspicions. We'll talk about that later. But there were the charges. Derek Chauvin charged with second-degree murder, third-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter. J. Alexander Kung, Thomas Lane, Thaw, aiding and abetting second-degree murder. Now, I've heard all of the information that comes about these supporting cast members, if you will, being new to the job, and he outranks them as an officer. But people know the difference between life and death. They know the difference between right and wrong. And when it comes to life, I understand when you're new to a job and new to a working situation, you have to take it very easy and walk very tenderly. As far as the comments you make and correcting your superiors, I understand that. I understand the rank and file. I understand protocol very well. But we're talking about a man's life and not the life of an animal. Floyd's death triggered demonstrations and protests in more than 75 U.S. cities around the world against police brutality, police racism, and the lack of police accountability. So why such an outcry? Well, even in a doctor's office, in a hospital, you walk in and the doctor has to gauge the level of pain. And sometimes he'll ask, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me the degree of pain that you're experiencing. Is it a 3? Is it a 4? Is it a 5? Is it a 10? Well, what you've been seeing, people who are not of color, who cannot understand this kidney stone in America, if you will, you're seeing people saying this is a 10. It's above a 10. It's like a 10 squared. So while I don't advocate this, all that has come with the protests and the demonstrations, I do understand the pain. People do burn down communities when they never have felt that the community, and I'm not justifying this, but please hear me. When you do not feel that something doesn't belong to you, it is easy to destroy it to get a voice. And everything that's been happening at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, I'll ask you to look up that address and you'll understand what I mean, is just unveiling centuries of what people have been conditioned to believe about people of color, black and brown people. I'll get to that more in another moment's time. While blacks make up 12 to 14% of the population in this country, from 2015 to 2019, they accounted for 26.4% of those that were killed by police under all circumstances. In other words, blacks were the victims of the lethal use of force by police at nearly twice, hear this, nearly twice the rate in the general population. Whites make up, and here's what it means, whites make up the majority of victims of police use of lethal force, 50.3% from 2015 to 2019, same time period. However, whites make up 61% of the nation's population. So you do the math, you'll understand that while blacks only make up 12 to 14%, they have been on the other end, the brunt of 26.4% of the brutalities and the deaths and the use of brutal force by the law enforcement community. Now, why are they so angry? Here is a prime comparison. Last week, so nearly about a week to the exact date, a young man by the name of Sebastian Arzadon, Arzadon. Just Google it. Do the research. Do your homework. Sebastian Arzadon was arrested in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. Now, please hear this. He was alleged, and the evidence is pretty stiff against him, as a double murderer. But on the videos of his arrest, you can see about 3, 4, 5 police officers who've taken him into custody. He's wounded. They are bandaging his wounds. They are holding a water bottle up to his mouth to refresh him, like the Dylan Ruth person taken to McDonald's to get a meal after he has murdered maliciously 9 people in a church in South Carolina. And so these kinds of things reach a tipping point where people are tired and frustrated. And allow me to go on. So here's the thing. So Mr. Floyd is just the steam that's been coming from an already simmering kettle. Yes, I will say this. There are something called the 7 mountains of influence. 7 mountains of influence. And that book was written by whom I believe to be to have been the former CEO of Home Depot. And in the book, he understands and underscores that there are 7 mountains of influence in the world, in society. The mountain of religion, family, education, government, media, arts, and of course, business. And the reality is, these 7 mountains of influence, mostly people of color have been locked out of their rightful impact and seat at the table. It's no different. Even in churches, people have said to me for years, and I'm not racist at all, but I do believe in the truth. People have said to me for years, I remember the first time someone said to me, Pastor, I believe Jesus is coming soon. I said, why do you believe the return of Jesus coming soon? And this was about 20 years ago. And they said, well, have you noticed how blacks and whites are now fellowshipping together? And they said from their vantage point, this was their indication that Jesus was soon to return, i.e., the unity of the body of Christ. And I don't have a problem with that at all. But here's where my problem is. And I said this to the person. I said, Jesus is not returning soon because the church is still too fragmented as his body. I said to them, it is nothing new for black people to be sources of entertainment for white people, even in churches. I said, in slavery, black slaves buck danced, laughed when things weren't funny from the master's lips. They scratched where they weren't even itching because it pleased the master. I said, we have always sang for white people. We've always been their entertainment. I said, when people of color are invited to leadership positions, not just to influence communities of color, but holistically, you have impact and decision-making at the table, then and only then is Jesus soon to return. Let me say what I mean further. When you talk about the church, the question comes to my mind, why has the church not been able to defeat racism? Why has the church not been able to defeat racism? In other words, we have a group within the church called evangelicals, mostly white. And these are men who are of esteem, renowned, leaders, and I take nothing from them. I'm not a hater. I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem when you are a leader in the church of the Lord Jesus Christ and you are blind or have been blinded. You have a myopic view of right and wrong. if you are able to hear from God and to interpret his word, you should be able to, at the very least, discern the difference between right and wrong without color being a filter. And I think one of the challenges is you have evangelicals who are supporting bigotry, racism, and they have a slant. And their out is because someone supports the taking does not support the taking of human life in their view and in their definition. They throw out all other wrongs, inherent wrongs, and support this person in this particular political party for all the various political positions. And I don't know many of you well, so I'm going to tread very easily. And when we get to know each other better, I can call it like I want to call it. So when you have abortion as an issue and you stand on that, the protection of human life, and you throw out every other thing that a person or a party is doing that is wrong, and you marry that party based on the one party politic issue, then that becomes wrong within itself. What I mean is, you've always had the church at a vantage point of not using spiritualism or spiritual eyes, and in place of being spiritual, they've been religious. Let's go further with this same ideal. Whites have been largely lied to about black people in their homes, in churches, regarding their exposures. They've been told that black people are ignorant, dangerous, and because of their misinformation, they often live in fear. I can't tell you the number of times I've been followed in stores, and times I've had to check people in that respect. Times I've walked by white women and they clutched their purse as if I had something that I wanted to take from them. And the reality is, well, I'll just leave it at that. That wasn't true. One reason that the church has been ineffective in making these kinds of changes is because the church has substituted being spiritual for being religious. Think about it. Slave masters use religion. Slave masters who would have a Sunday service and go to their churches on Sunday mornings and read out of the Bible, study the Bible, and come home and kill black slaves that same afternoon. The KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, what is their insignia for their existence? A burning cross. Yes, they used religious extremism to promote hate and heighten fear. There's a word that's known as the word jihad. It's Muslim extremists using holy wars to justify their use of religion against the West. So it's always been where people were religious, but not spiritual. And here's what I mean. When we talk about the church, we talk about the ecclesia. That's a Greek word. It simply means those called out from the world. And I reemphasize, those called out from the world as a body of believers united under the banner of Christ, regardless of race, regardless of other particular percentages that affect their lives, education, regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of any of the like. They're called out from the world and united under the banner of Christ. Well, what is religion, George Matthews? Well, religion is not the same as being spiritual. It is any practice which brings persons to believing that which is unreal and deceptive. It's what is it? Karl Marx, I think it was, that said that religion is the opium of the weak. It causes, if you do something religiously over and over, routinely, it can lull people to sleep. So it can bring an individual, religion that is, to deception. Religion is powerless, and I love this definition. It's powerless to deal with the wrong in people. Religion cannot deal with wrong motives, wrong belief systems, wrong actions. Religion just keeps you in a mode. It's powerless to deal with wrong in people. It cannot deal with the creature nature in a man. Religion does not. Religion feeds further on self-righteousness, that is, rightness in one's own eyes, blinding them to the truth. It also feeds on pride. So you can be a member of a church, you can be religious while in church, but it never deals with the consequence of wrong actions, wrong motives, and wrong teachings. Religion connects one to subjective truth. I love this definition. Truth based on one's own experiences, subjective truth, rather than objective truth, the truth about a matter or a thing within itself. Religion never changes the heart. It never changes the heart. People can be at a church, seated in church, by a church pew, but the religion itself never changes the heart. Religion allows people to become fixed in the positions, their previous positions, set in their thinking by established belief systems. So religion never can rearrange and change firmly set belief systems. Belief systems are set on significant or influential others, repetitive information, experiences, and environments. Religion can cause one to believe they have the heart of God when they are really wrong. And not to preach, but it was the Apostle Paul who said that he jailed and murdered Christians, if you will, thinking that he was right when he was wrong. He had to have a spiritual experience before his religion could be subsided. And then the only thing that's worse than religion is excuses and excuse making. Yes, see, an excuse is defined as to refuse or avoid, to place one thing in front of another. And here's my observation about excuses. No man can effectively change until he rids himself of excuses. So black people, and here's the thing. Whites have largely been told that blacks have made no contributions to society. And I challenge people. I have the opportunity of doing graduation addresses from time to time. And where we can, we talk about the impact of African Americans, Africans still waiting to become Americans, and their contributions to American society. You have everything from spark plugs. Every person drives a vehicle that has spark plugs in it, if you will. And regardless of their race, they don't know that you have a black man, a black inventor to thank for spark plugs. You have black inventors such as one of my favorites, Granville Woods, responsible as an electrical genius, responsible for overhead conducting systems, automatic safety systems, automatic air brakes, electric railways, the railway telegraph system. All of that you see in large cities in America came by way of dark hands, black men. You have everything from the traffic light, let alone, let's we speak of other inventions, everything from the iron to the ice cream scoop, the underpinnings for the cell phone system, fiber optic cable. People of color, dark hands created blood plasma bag. Come on, the first open heart surgery. Come on, but people who are not of color have whitewashed history in America. And I'm still angry in a sense because I was taught that in the case of the American cowboy in the West and in the Western movies where you had him fighting and battling, if you will, with the Native American, I was taught by whitewash history to pull for, to go for the American cowboy, only to discover later in my life, in my educational pursuits, that the truth was that in America, white cowboys were stealing a country from the Native American who owned it. And then these same people turned around and stole black people from another country, Africa, and brought them to this country to build the country that they had stolen. A stolen country, then stolen people to work the stolen country, building it up, and they claim to benefit from it. Now, you can check the history on that. But see, when you're religious instead of spiritual, your eyes are closed, and you don't want to hear anything like that. And because racism is based on fear, you will go to any degree to keep the truth from coming out. There's this idea, and I'm going to have to wrap this up, and I wanted to start this show today by just calling the names of all the people from January 1st, 2015 to current, with Mr. George Floyd being the last of all the persons that have been killed while in custody of law enforcement. All law enforcement are not wrong, and I'm not saying that. But there have been enough statistics to justify our outcry. Since January 1st, according to the Washington Post's database, from January 1st, 2015 to current, 1,252, that's 1252, 1,252 black people have been shot and killed by police while in custody. You know, there's this compelling reason that we look at statistics, we look at data, because the numbers don't lie. So I told you we would deal with Mr. George Floyd. We would deal with the church in America and then black people. I end by saying this, and we'll pick this up again next week. Black people, yes, there is a thing called black on black crime. Yes, we should be just as angry about that. But I believe that the black on black crime, you see, in slavery, there's another show we'll do on this. In slavery, the black slave was taught to never trust themselves, to never have any confidence in each other, because of the obvious that in the white slave master's mind, if these black people ever unite, they can overrun us and take the plantation, so forth and so on. So they were taught, they were divided. And so as a result of those divisions, and there's something that we'll get into, not tonight, not this time, but we'll talk about it. But when I was in college, we studied something in African American studies, and I'm thankful and indebted to those courses, called the Willie Lynch letters. And Willie Lynch was, and this is all documented in history, the annals of history. Willie Lynch was brought in as a West Indies slave owner to American slave owners to teach them how to have better control of the slaves, because they were losing what they thought was valuable product. And one of the things that Willie Lynch instituted, and he said this in his opening address, that if you will institute these particulars, this enslavement and all of the vestiges that come with it will last 300 to 400 years. And we're at that place where almost prophetically, we are divided against each other because of certain intentional devices that were imbued within the heinousness of slavery. And so, yes, we will have to talk about black on black crime, but that's not to mitigate the focus on racism in America. Those are two separate issues, and I think one is a result of the other. There's a bleeding wound in America, and it's America who has not repented for the ills of the black slave within American history. This country has never repented and may never repent, but will ever deal with the vestiges, the leftovers that have come from such heinous treatment. I have visited, my family and I have visited the Smithsonian African American Institute of that history. I have visited several museums, the two in Montgomery, Alabama, and other places across our country to pick up information about the heinousness of the crime of being black in America as a result of that very negative point in American history. You don't know what it is if you're not a person of color. You don't know what it is to have to be talked to by your parents, to be prepared to not disrespect white officers and white people in general, only because your parents wanted you to return home every day. There's this thing called, and I won't get into it with this show, but we have to talk about how black people have been devalued by a particular racial terminology. Because the thought behind the thought is that if I can devalue you with my ill-fated comments about you, number one, perhaps you'll begin believing the devaluation yourself. But then number two, I will cause you to look up to me as superior, and you'll see yourself as inferior. And it has never been the will of God. It has never been the will of our Heavenly Father for any race to be inferior or superior. By one blood, He's made all nations. And I'll end with this, and I welcome your comments. I welcome your questions. I have a few that, as I polled my particular Facebook page, some people have sent me questions of which I'll get to next week, hopefully. But this whole issue of racism, for those who are lovers of Jesus Christ and God, our Heavenly Father, whom I believe to be our Heavenly Father at least, if they would have just been able to read. Yes, they owned plantations, but I don't think they were able to read, or they read religiously with spiritual blinders. There's a prayer that Jesus taught His disciples, and I end with this, in St. Matthew chapter 6. And it was in response to the disciples' question, Lord, teach us to pray, as John the Baptist also taught his followers or his disciples to pray. And Jesus responds by saying this, after this manner, therefore pray ye, our Father, which art in heaven. Wait a minute. Our is a collective term. He did not say, this is Jesus now, He is the God or Father of the white or the black or the Asian or the Latino or the Mexican or the Native American, but He is our Father. That one word, our, could have ended slavery in America or not allowed it to begin at all. Could have ended this heinous treatment of the Native American in America. But people read even the Bible, what I believe to be God's holy word, with spiritual blinders or with eyes of religion. And religion will cause you to be stupefied by your own blind training. And so, lest I be long, I want to just thank you for giving me this time. I want you to please subscribe to this particular YouTube channel and place the notification icon so that you will be notified each time we do this particular show. And until next week or whenever you choose to subscribe to this channel and watch our videos, remember, we can no longer be silent. Blessings to you, and thank you for your attention.